Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Mark Wilson from Clarke Transport Limited. Thank you for joining us today, Mark.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. So please tell us about your business, what it does, and its position in the supply chain cycle, please.
Well, Clarke Transport's a family-owned pallet network business. It's a fourth-generation business, commenced in 1933 from the Midlands, and we've now got the fourth generation of Clarke Transport operating in the business. We're a traditional pallet network. We operate from 10 locations throughout the UK, spread across the UK to give us a national footprint, pretty much delivering to every postcode every day across the UK. We will deliver upwards of about 92% of all of the freight that comes through the business ourselves, and only in the extremities of the country where it's difficult to get to, do we have some specific partners who operate in those areas for us. But they still operate to all our standards using our IT equipment. We specialise in ADR, so we're known as a hazardous ADR network, and around about 60% of our freight is of an ADR nature. And so, ADR compliance is absolutely critical to us. Typically we'll handle 4,500 consignments a day, delivering across the country, and around about 75% of those will be delivered on a next day basis, with the remainder being on an economy basis. So that's the shortened version, David.
No, thank you for doing that. I always ask everyone the same question: what brought you originally into the lovely logistics sector?
Well, it was luck, if I'm being brutally honest. I won't go into it a lot of detail, but following a fairly messy divorce in my late 20s, I moved back into a village close to a town I used to live in, and I left everything, left the wife, left the job, left the whole lot. Sort of moved back home, if you like, and didn't know what I was going to do. But having somebody that's never been out of work ever, I decided I'll just go and knock on some doors, one of which was the largest warehouse in a lovely place called Scunthorpe. And they were recruiting as a company called Bibby Distribution. They handled a logistics operation for Nice Today's food network. I knocked on their door. They had some jobs as warehouse pickers, and that is where I started. But for me, it was a wow moment. I hadn't even considered what logistics or supply chain was. And within a matter of weeks, I actually started on the same day as a new warehouse manager. So within a matter of weeks, I kind of knocked on his door and said, I want a career in this business. And he said, good, go away for a year. And in a year's time, we'll take a look at you and see what we're going to do. And sure enough, some opportunities came up around about a year afterwards, and I started my really journey through logistics at that point, from handling everything on the shop floor through stock control, supervisory, sort of section managers, transport managers, warehouse managers, became the general manager of that operation within about 4 years, and the account director a year after. So it was and there it commenced. So never looked back.
Oh, fantastic. And most people that I talk to in my sort of day job, most of us that are in logistics sort of fell into it rather than had a cunning plan to get into it. So no, you're absolutely right, and it's a great industry that once you get into it, you love, and gets under your skin and drives you mad, but you love as well at the same time, and certainly it's great. So please tell us about your business sector and how you see the sector developing, changing in the next few years.
Well, the sector, I guess, we put ourselves in a pallet network sector, a general pallet network sector. It is a relatively mature sector with a number of big players in there, and then some smaller players around the outside. We're slightly different from that, given that we're an ADR business, and pretty much primarily an ADR business, and so there's probably only another one like us in the UK. And then I would say we're very different to those guys anyway, because we have a unique proposition where a customer putting volume into our network can see that volume every step of the way through our network. So, we're slightly different from that. But how is the sector going to alter? I don't know. I'm expecting us probably to become slightly busier. We'll talk about the government later probably, but Economically, it's not great at the moment, and so what we're seeing with customers, they are doing, one of two things: either finding a cheaper route to market, less contracted logistics, more transactional logistics, and with a reduced consignment size. So, we're typically seeing, between 1 to 4 pallets being our sweet spot, and we see probably more volume coming into that arena as the economy continues doing what it does. If it continues to harden, we'll see. What I also expect, probably there'll be some more consolidation. It's always the word, isn't it? And I think there has been a bit of consolidation in the industry, and I think there'll be more to come in the industry. And it is for us in logistics. It's also, so we love it when we get into it. It's also a really hard world, isn't it, to make money? So we work with high resources, high costs, and low margins. And so in order to address those, there's got to be more consolidation, I suspect. I suspect that's where it will go.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And what do you see as the biggest opportunities and threats for the sector in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think the biggest opportunities in the sector that we work in, and that was just discussed, economically, it's going to be tough. And I think customers, putting it right, we're not in a seller's market, we're in a buyer's market. So the customers are buying their products through us, and we have very little opportunity to really drive those rates up as much as we would like. And so we've all got to be, very efficient in what we're doing. And so I think, economically, the country isn't growing. The country isn't growing at all. 40% of our business is in the construction sector, and we're seeing that flatlining despite the government saying that that's a growth area for them. And so the only way I can see the opportunity for us is just a more volume opportunity as that hardens. Customers currently and prospective customers, I think, will look for probably a route to market that doesn't tie them up with a lot of resource, or doesn't tie them into contracts, and I see that being an opportunity that we can exploit in that area. In terms of threats, I think the biggest threat, we keep talking about it, and it certainly grew arms and legs a couple of years ago around the Christmas time, is driver availability. That is the biggest threat for me, and continues to be the biggest threat. Recruiting, retaining, maintaining driver resources is incredibly difficult, and the driving population, the average age of the driver is still getting older. And so for me, it's all about resources. Trucks we can buy, sheds we can buy, resources. We've got to give the best wage we can to a driver, but they're becoming scarcer and scarcer. So I think that in the next 3 years will be, really will be the biggest issue for us.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and that reflects a lot of things we hear anecdotally as well. When things pick up, there's almost a driver shortage waiting to happen, isn't it, already? So that's good. How are the continual changes in technology affecting your sector?
Massively. I'm a data freak. I think we all have to be. I talked a little earlier about costs and accountability is high, margin low. You've got to be over the small stuff in order to maintain your margin, and that's all in the numbers, it's all in the data. And for me, I think you've really got to invest in it, or get left behind. You really have. And so for us, it's vitally important to harness the latest technology, be it being how we mine data from the business, or technology being taken from vehicles that allow us to see through telematics how those vehicles are being operated. It's just vital to controlling your cost. Okay, and do you think, AI? Everyone's talking about AI. Do you think AI will have much of an impact in the business? Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've done a number of things. We're trying to take repetitive tasks that administrative people take out of the business by automating those through the application of AI. We're trying to do that. We have to be a little bit careful again in that we're a highly regulated industry, so we can't do anything that will sort of breach any of that regulation anywhere, or our understanding of how the business is operating. We've got to keep that at all times, and so there are things that it can help us with. And for sure, our IT team are all over that AI and see where it can assist us.
No, that's great. And what are people in the sector not talking about that perhaps they should be?
I think probably it's an interesting question, and I'll come back to systems and AI and things like that again. For me, that I think again another big risk we've got is cyber and cyber security. It's probably one of the biggest risks at the moment outside from a system and a technology perspective, notwithstanding the driver shortages I was talking about. But cyber security is critical. We invest very, very heavily into it, but you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I think consolidation and a lot of working together takes place. We work with some partners. We take volume from other logistics businesses. We give some volume to a couple of logistics businesses. Our businesses are as strong as that weakest link, and unless we all invest well and keep ourselves covered well to the threat of cyber attack, then it will find a way in. And once it's in, you struggle to stop it. Look what happened with Knights of Old and others, Owens, I think it was, wasn't it, who had an attack. And we invest pretty heavily in it, and I see the amount of attacks that we stop to our protection on a monthly basis is scary, and I just see that getting worse. So that for me is something that we should all be talking more about and trying to protect ourselves, particularly where we trade with each other. We had a partner recently that got attacked as well, and we have to be very, very, very clear with our communications backwards and forwards with that partner, how we were stopping some of that communication, because we had to stop that getting through our safeguards and into us. So that I think is a really critical area at the moment.
And with that in mind, that's very interesting to hear that. Do you think that should be done through maybe an association like the Association of Pallet Networks, or rather than individual companies trying to do it, if it could be a group, a centre of excellence everyone could link into?
I think that would be great. I mean, each company has its own challenges, has its own securities, has its own systems, and therefore, I guess there's a bit of care needed, because each company's proprietary systems will want something else or will only work with something else. But I think, if there was an opportunity to centralise a system that dealt with both, pick the two things that we just spoken about, both with cyber security and potentially AI and AI developments. I mean, I think that could be a great shout, really, David.
Okay, good. Okay, and how is the sort of green transition that impacting your sector? Because I can say this, so I don't know where else to comment, but I think everyone, as human beings and as companies, want to be greener and all of that stuff. But in reality, everyone wants it, but no one wants to pay for it. And, so it's that dilemma. So, how is that affecting yourselves, and what do you see as the potential solution for it?
You're absolutely right. I'm quite cynical on this green stuff, I have to say. When, as a country, we're kind of small in the whole world output of CO2 and all the rest of it. And you got countries like India and China and Russia and America blowing holes in it. It makes you wonder what we're trying to do to affect it. However, affect it we must, because that's the world we're in. But I find it very, very difficult. Economically, it just won't work. Electric trucks are great, and I see what we're trying to do. But from our perspective, they work in a very, very minute part of our industry. If you have a very low mileage bus stop route, travelling around a site or a town or something, then the electric truck won't work. The 3 to 4 times the cost of a normal truck. You can't double shift them, so you've got to charge it at night, use it in the day, and you can't get the weight on it, because you get the weight of the batteries, and you can't get the mileage out of it. So from an electric perspective, it is a non-starter commercially, because bluntly, our customers won't pay for it. And you knocked the nail on the head earlier. You said nobody wants to pay for it. The only solution in town at the moment is HVO. And unless that comes to an equivalent price of diesel, again, our customers won't pay for it. We've had many, many meetings. We created our route to net zero, and according to that, on a 5-year basis, we're going to be net zero by 2030, which should be, sorry, 2050, which should be great. But that relies, of course, on our customers buying HVO fuel, and they won't buy it. So for me, it's an absolute non-starter unless the HVO fuel price gets down into a comparative price with diesel. Just won't work. And I don't think there's any other technology. Hydrogen probably is the next best, but that's, you know, we've got what, two hydrogen plants in the UK. It's years away, really. And so I do look at it with a very cynical eye, I'm afraid. We should not penalise for burning diesel because it's our job. It's what we have to do. And providing we utilise our vehicles well, we get great utilisation out of them, we get great mileage out of them, we use them as efficiently as we can, we get the best MPG we can out of them. We shouldn't apologise for burning diesel because we're having to turn wheels to keep this country moving. But we need a better type of technology to help us down that route.
Okay, no, and also you've got the depreciation and the movement of technology, because technology is moving so quickly. You know, something that's the greatest thing today in electric vehicles could be, you know, obsolete in 3 or 5 years' time.
But you can't get the lifespan out of the vehicle. So from there's a lot of effort, a lot of money being pushed in. And I did go out to a manufacturer, interestingly, recently in Europe to look at their electric offering, and you know, they took us around the factory and they took us around the electric factory, and you know, so how many electric vehicles have you sold this month? You know, we've sold 2. Well, how many? You know, and you can see the difference. The factory and the main factory is absolutely bouncing, as you would expect. At the electric factory, people are wandering around eating sandwiches. You know, it's not there yet. It just isn't there, and it won't be.
Okay, well, let's hope things can develop over time for everyone's benefit and the world's benefit. During your career, you know, what development in the sector surprised you most?
I mean, there've been many things all the time, but I think the ones that stand out, and again, I'll go back to IT and being a data freak again. The fact that we can mine information at will now is phenomenal. You know, I can remember, you know, if I go back into the early 90s, you know, a driver disappeared. He hadn't got a clue where he was. He was out doing his route. He didn't know what MPG he'd got. He didn't know what deliveries he'd made. You've got no mobile phones. You've got no way of communicating with that driver at all. He went out. He trusted him or her to do the job, and off they went the way they did it. And it was a great time. I wish we could go back to some of those things. But right here, right now, you know, what is the most surprising to me is I can see on a real-time basis everything. And not only that, there are systems, something like Microsoft Power BI is phenomenal for our business. It data mines information on a real-time basis and just presents it to us. You know, if I go back into the early 90s, we were messing about with spreadsheets at the end of the day, and you know, at the end of the week, we might have had something decent that would relate to the previous week. Now I can see it within seconds, and that for me is the most surprising thing. If I think back over that time, and you've got things like truck technologies and tire technologies and fuel efficiencies and all these kind of things that are, but at the end of the day, we run trucks and we deliver pallets and we collect pallets. That's what we do. But that level of granular information is phenomenal. It was sci-fi stuff back in the 90s. Now it's there.
It's reality, isn't it? Yeah, you're absolutely right. And thanks, Mark. And the final question I ask everyone: if you could speak to the government, then what would you ask them to do to help your business grow and flourish?
Well, yes, we'll be politically correct with it. I think there are 2 or 3 things really. First of all, they've got to support recruitment of drivers. I think it's got to be a funded support program of recruiting drivers and getting more drivers into this industry. We can only do so much, but if I think about it, this country, as does most countries, rely on trucks running around the country, turning wheels, delivering things to get stuff done, or to eat things, or to drink things. You know, you name it, what happens runs on trucks. If no truck ran, the country would stop. It's really, really important. And so for me, you know, they have to get behind a program, a funded program of growing the attractiveness of drivers in our industry. And let's also be really clear. I get really frustrated when people say it's just a driver. It is not just a driver. It's a highly regulated industry, often carrying, product and goods that, if it went wrong, could be catastrophic. They're travelling on a road network that's not fantastic, and in places where congestion is getting even greater, particularly in and around cities. And they do a terrific job. And it's a highly trained job and a highly regulated job. So it's not just a driver. They're a really, really important asset doing a very highly skilled job, in my opinion. And so I think the government, point number one, should get behind a funded scheme to really help the recruitment into our industry and show our industry for what it is. Number two, sort of state of the road tail. They're absolutely shocking. If you're going to start some roadworks and finish some roadworks, start when you say you're going to start and finish when you say you're going to finish. Don't leave them running for months and months and months because we can't get around the country and sort the state of the roads out with the potholes. And then the third one, I'm trying to be politically correct, don't tax us anymore. We struggle to make margins. This national insurance tax practically crippling our business. We've had to go to our customers and ask our customers to support because it's just too high. When your fixed costs are high and your margin is low, that level of tax increase just takes away every element of your profit. And this government, right here, right now, don't understand that. So don't tax us anymore.
Okay, no, I really appreciate it, Mark, and I share a lot of your views. So just want to say a big thank you, Mark, for joining us and telling us all about Clarke Transport. I'm sure our viewers and listeners will really enjoy it. Thanks again.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, David.